Hey everyone, welcome back to the Illumineers Quest podcast where we talk everything Lorcana. I'm Zach.
And I'm Jacob.
And thanks for coming on this journey with us. Okay, I think we're both really excited, but also kind of disappointed that we have to talk about this early. Chapter 3.
I mean, I'm a little like, yeah, I mean, it's going to be good. Like, I think, especially some of the new stuff we've heard about is exciting, but overall, I think it's just too soon.
Yeah, I agree. And I think we've both said that this is the last time we're going to talk about Chapter 3 for a really long time. I know in the Chapter 1, Season 1 era of the show, we kind of like did the weekly updates and the card releases.
For Chapter 2.
Yeah, for Chapter 2. We haven't solidified it yet, but maybe like monthly updates on like the cards that have been released. I think it also would be better because like one of the first cards that was released was the Robin Hood Steel card, and we were like, oh, that's garbage. And it turns out it situationally is like really, really good. Yeah. And so I think it just like builds more context into what we're talking about too. But yeah, the big topic this week is obviously Chapter 3. I probably wouldn't have wanted to talk about it either, but there's a bunch of juicy details that are like really going to change the game.
It's exciting. Like
it's extremely exciting.
It's exciting. It just is too soon, and we'll get into that. But
okay, yeah, so with that said, as always, thanks everyone for listening. And if you are new to the show or new to following us, you can follow us on YouTube at Illumineers Quest if you're listening to the audio version. You can follow us on X at Lorcana Pod. You can also email us questions or comments at lorcanapod@gmail.com. And if you are on YouTube, then you can follow the audio version on Spotify, Apple, iheart, any of the other major podcast networks. So we appreciate all the support.
That Spotify thing came out about a week ago or so, and we found out we were like the number one for a few people. That was really nice.
Yeah, that was crazy. Which is actually, we have questions and comments from listeners, and that's it's kind of what I want to talk about is the Spotify stuff. So we've had like polls and Q&As for most of the episodes that we've done, and I kind of wanted to just like go back through some of the Chapter 2 stuff now that we've done it. And so So this is a couple weeks old now, but the first question was, what inks are you most excited for in Chapter 2? And half of the results were for Emerald. So, I mean, I'm in that boat. Mm-hmm. I definitely still love a lot of the Emerald stuff. I mean, I think at heart, if I could play an Emerald deck nonstop, that's definitely what I would do. Unfortunately, it just never is like super, super meta, and so it's hard to like really, really compete with it.
Yeah, like... to me, like, I thought it was so broken in the beginning. Like, I think we both did. We were like, oh, everyone's going to be the most broken ink, and everyone's going to be playing it. And it didn't turn out that way.
I think the problem is that, and we've said this before, but I think the problem is that, like, 75% of the really good cards are uninkable. Yeah. And so it's hard to build an extremely strong deck around so much uninkableness. And so you have to be very picky and choosy with the way that you're playing the cards. But, yeah, so... so 50% were for Emerald. In second place was Amethyst with just over 30%, and then kind of spread between Amber, Ruby, and Sapphire after that. I would be interested to see if we were to redo that today, if everybody had the same comments or not, because I think as it was in Chapter 1, people are still pretty much playing the two meta decks, Ruby Amethyst and Amber Steel. So
is Emerald your favorite ink?
Yeah, I mean, just like in a vacuum where you're not building decks and you're not like trying to compete and whatever.
Just overall the idea of
it. I think it's so fun and disruptive and has a ton of lore questing in there and has a lot of annoyance that you can create on your opponent. So yeah, I definitely think so.
Nice.
What about you?
It was Amethyst in Chapter 1, and it's Amethyst in Chapter 2.
Okay, I knew that was the answer for Chapter 1. I didn't know if it had changed or not. Okay, and then we had another one that's, I think this is a pretty straightforward answer, and I definitely would have given the same one, and we just said, at the beginning of Chapter 2, once everything had been revealed, we asked what set would be more remembered, later on down the line, Chapter 1 or Chapter 2, and 75% of the respondents said Chapter 1, which... Again, like that's kind of, I think if you take it to like Chapter 2 and Chapter 3, like I think it's a little bit more on parity of like which one gets remembered more and has a little bit more to do with the actual overall like, viability of the set versus like chapter 1's always going to be remembered first, right? Like Pokemon Original 151, everybody always remembers that.
I can't tell you set 2 for Pokemon.
Yeah, same. And I'm a huge Pokemon fan too. Yeah. And then lastly, the one we did off of the ink art. We asked everyone what was their favorite overall ink art color, and with 50% of the vote on this one as well, we have Amethyst in the lead.
So I gotta remember, what was mine? I think mine was Amethyst.
Yeah, and I don't remember what my answer was at the time, but I've thought about it a lot since, and I think Amethyst probably is mine too. It's got a ton of colors. It's got a ton of just like really cool spells.
Mine might have been Emerald, actually, if I think back to it. I gotta remember, but
yeah, I mean, I think Emerald has the best top cards with like Tiana is the first one that comes to my mind. But
Ray.
I think overall Ray, of course, can't forget legendary Ray. But I think overall Amethyst probably has like the best theming for me.
For sure, I would say I'd agree with that. I might not have agreed with it, but I do now.
Yeah, but anyways, yeah. So I thought it would just be fun to go back through some of those, and then we can do that again in another couple weeks and kind of just recap on where we've been with some of the interactions with the episodes.
If you do the polls, your voices are heard.
We look at them all, and I get, and people may or may not know this too, but we actually have to go in and publish the comments that people leave. Like if you on the question and answer, like if you leave an answer on that, like we actually have to go in and like publish it, because you could just say curse word, curse word, curse word, curse word, and obviously we don't want that to be out there, and so we go through and read them all and publish them. And so if you are leaving a comment, we see it, and thank you for that too, as always. Okay, card of the week. Jake has picked Arthur, so tell us about it.
The Emerald Arthur. No, I'm just kidding. Amethyst Arthur. Let me bring up so I can tell you the exact wording.
He's the Amethyst Quester. I mean, I guess
Wizard in training.
I think
Sorcerer
that's right.
in training.
And he's a 3-cost uninkable, 1 strength, 3 willpower. Quests for 1, but Wizard Apprentice. But his real ability is whenever this character quests, you may return another chosen character to your hand to gain 2 lore.
Chosen character of yours.
Yeah.
To gain 2 lore. So I am playing super meta. Like this is one of the more meta cards right now. It's super meta Amethyst Ruby. That's what I'm currently playing. So this card is big on the mind for me. This for me in my game so far has made it consistently where I can quest for 8 back-to-back turns, and that for me is why I made it card of the day. But it's just big on the mind because of those things.
He's you have to deal with him, and the problem is if you don't deal with him in one turn, you could conceivably get 6 lore off of him.
Yeah.
Or 5 or 6 lore from 1 or 2 people questing, and so he's really hard to deal with because he can be played really early on where there's not a bunch of removal spells yet. He's got 3 health, so that things like Let the Storm Rage on and Teeth and Ambitions don't take him out alone, and so it's very hard to get him off the board before he can quest and get all of that additional benefit.
Yeah, it can be pretty wacky at some points. Obviously, the major pairing would be a goat Merlin. I think that's like, if you're going for straight lore, that's the main one. Another one would be rabbit, because it's insane card draw while gaining lore.
I also think Pinocchio. I know we don't play Pinocchio, and that's not like the most meta thing ever. But if paired with the 3 questing Pinocchio, it protects him and it keeps you from removing Pinocchio, and that's really annoying considering he quests for 3. So
I do like that. I just think not that anyone is really playing Steel in the meta right now, but if you're playing against Steel, that you're never getting Pinocchio to quest.
No, and that's very true, and I think that like super hyper aggro Amber Amethyst deck is still out there. Mm-hmm. But it's aside from that, like if you're playing Steel basically hard counters it. Yeah. So yeah. But anyways, I think Merlin's a good one. I think he's very annoying to deal with. I think it's a really good card. So if you're an Amethyst fan and you're interested in revamping your deck.
Also, it has a beautiful enchanted.
Yeah, I think it's the second. I think it's the second top enchanted right now. I think it's Cinderella and then Arthur.
I may or may not, if I ever get that one, play with that enchanted.
Ooh, that's crazy talk right there.
I love that enchanted.
Okay, what's on our mind? League recap / news. I mean, the news is obviously the topic of the week, so don't want to dive too much into that right now. But I think the other thing is like card availability. Like it's finally seems to be in a really, really, really good spot. Like I have seen multiple people online posting finding cards in the wild. Like that did never happen. Like that like genuinely never happened for the first 8 weeks of chapter 1. Like you didn't find cards out. On top of that, our local store when we went to League this week had 12 display boxes of chapter 1. 12.
That's nuts.
And they came in on Friday. We saw the post that they made that said, "Hey, we got more cards on Friday." And League is on Tuesday. And so they made it all the way through the weekend and still had 12 left. And so that to me says chapter 1's in a good spot. And if you're a new player and you're getting into the game and you're looking for stuff, like now's the time.
Also, the singles market is great.
Yep. I'm glad you said that because that was going to be my next point.
Sorry.
No,
so that's your point.
That's not. You didn't steal it. You transitioned me perfectly. I mean, I think the gauge of the market is basically made with Rapunzel, and she's under $30.
Nutty. Absolutely nutty.
I mean, Rapunzel gifted with healing from chapter 1 is under $30. Maleficent, Monstrous Dragon, who's probably the second most impactful chapter 1 legendary, is $26. I mean, Mickey, Brave Little Tailor is $5. I mean, I know he's not the most impactful, but he's Mickey. It's a fantastic card. I mean, Surfer Stitch is $12.
Yeah, that's the crazy one to me, is Surfer Stitch, because it had this rising point, and then it
just tanked after that. It's Elsa Spirit of Winter, $13. Belle, $13. Hades, $17. John Silver, $6. I mean, those are like you can build a deck with legendaries prices.
Yeah, I mean, if I were to say one from chapter 1 that I would go after now, it would be Elsa Spirit of Winter. I would say.
I think that's a really solid one.
If you don't have a play set, I would finish that now. I don't think prices are ever going to be much better than this.
I wouldn't think so either. I mean, there and even like the chapter 2 ones, are coming down pretty significantly here too. I mean, I know that Emo Beast, aka Tragic Hero in Steel, is the most expensive one for chapter 2, and he's under $30 as well, $28. And so that's expensive to buy a full play set, but if you only need 1 or 2, it's not awful. I mean, the most expensive legendary after that is Beast Relentless that you love in Emerald for $14. I mean, everything is like incredibly like reasonable. And so the whole point we're trying to make with this is if you're a new player, if you've kind of been hesitant on like really building out a deck or whatever, now's a really good time. Like you can really go for it.
Extremely. And I mean, this is relatively speaking to other hobbies. This is a more, I would say, on the pricier side of hobbies.
Definitely can get there.
If you are willing to spend on something like this is the perfect time.
I agree. It's definitely there. I mean, you can easily build a deck under $100 now. Easily, like a really good competitive deck.
Especially like if you like the new aggro, Amethyst Amber aggro, you can make that easy.
Yep.
Even Pinocchio at the 3 lore quester has dropped as well. So
so it's a great time to get in, and I would imagine everybody that's listening to this is probably pretty deep into the Lorcana scene, but maybe still you haven't been tracking them like we normally do, and so it's a good time to check out the prices and get some singles for a friend or loved one for Christmas even, if they've been looking for some singles or something to complete their decks. But yeah, it's a really good time. We made it through the dark period.
Yes, we did.
We came out on the other side. Both of us have recently bought singles to complete decks. I bought a ton of singles. I finally decided it was time to do it, and so yeah.
I just recently bought a playset of 4 Be Prepareds for $35.
Yeah, Be Prepared, and that's still one of the most expensive cards from chapter 1 too. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's I don't know, like $8 or something like that.
Yeah, it's dropped since I bought it too. So it.
Whole New World's there as well, but aside from those, everything is under $5 that you would want to play probably.
Yep, that's not legendary.
Okay, great time to get into the game. And with that said, we can talk about Chapter 3, which will hopefully continue the trend of being very reasonable.
Let's hope so. I'm gonna pull it up here as you talk about it, so I can get kind of my overall thoughts on it before I get too deep into it. But
yeah. So quick overview on Chapter 3. It is Chapter 3. Well, it's not even called Chapter 3. We just keep calling it Chapter 3.
It is called
Into the Inklands.
Inklands.
We just say Chapter 2, and it's not even called Chapter 2. It's just the shorter version for the second release
Rise of the Floodborn.
Yeah. So, Into the Inklands. We've got art from the display box. We've got art from the accessories. We have 4 card releases as well.
4 card releases, 3 characters, 1, get this, location.
Yep, 1 completely new type of card. It is a location card.
And the community overall, we think we've cracked. It's a little bit different, plays a little differently, but we think we've cracked it. And we'll get into that a little later, but that's just kind of the overview here. But one thing I did notice on the display boxes, the sleeves, the starter decks, and the deck boxes, they have a much lighter tone.
Very much so.
Color palette style.
Very fun. It seemed very light-hearted, fun.
Where I would say Rise of the Floodborn was a little darker, overall in color scheme and maybe even in theme. But this one just seems like we've got DuckTales going on. We've got the island of Mountanui. We've got a Happy Stitch. It just seems lighter overall.
Tailspin. So shout out friend Spencer, who came on the podcast a couple episodes ago and said he wants DuckTales. And guess what? He's getting his wish. I showed it to him and I said, sorry, your wallet is going to hate you, and showed him the Scrooge picture, and he was like, when does it come out?
February 23rd.
Which is a very good transition for me. Thank you. Yeah, so it comes out February 23rd. We got official release date for the local gaming stores. And yeah, a few more details. So let's get into the characters real quick before we dive into the location, because I think the locations is what we want to spend the majority of the time on this.
I just thought I'd throw that out there before we got into it.
No, if you haven't heard about locations, stick around, because it's, spoiler alert, I think really, really going to change the game. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe it won't, but I think it's going to completely change some aspects of the game. So anyways.
Would you like me to read the, I can read the reveal they did here?
I think we talked about most of it. I mean, okay. I know we touched on the DuckTales and the Tailspin. There was one other one, wasn't there?
So, beloved Disney properties including
Treasure Planet,
DuckTales, Tailspin, and Treasure Planet.
Which I know you're pumped for.
Oh my gosh. So exciting. Hopefully, and they did even mention Jim Hawkins.
Yep.
And they said about his airfoil, which is his glider surfboard, which is one of my favorite scenes in the entire movie.
All right, so from the artwork that was released,
yes,
the deck box has a new Jafar card that we can see.
The display box.
Display box, yeah, looks very much like a Floodborn. All right, sorry, a Storyborn character. It looks very much like a Jafar you would see from the movie. We've also got another Stitch character, clearly a favorite of the Lorcana team, because we've got a bunch of Stitches and another one coming.
And there's actually 2 Stitches we know of. 2 new Stitches coming.
Yeah, sure seems like it. And then we have a new Piglet, which is a card that's also been revealed, so we'll dive in a little bit more to that one with the card. But we have some Piglet pirate art. From the starter decks, we have a new Pongo and Kiddos card, potentially. I know that the Kiddos are there, so I'm curious if that's a Pongo or a 101 Dalmatians card, or what the name of that one is.
Yep.
New Peter Pan, which has also been revealed, and so we'll talk about that one more in a little bit. Moana, / Montanui, which is also the playmat, and I love that. I want that playmat so bad. I love that playmat.
It's really crazy.
It's gorgeous.
And I believe it is probably a location card.
Yeah, I think everybody speculated that it's probably the location of Montanui.
But can we just every playmat from now on be a location card? Please?
Oh gosh, it's so good.
Like, imagine like the elephant graveyard as a playmat.
Oh, well, that's morbid, but...
I know, but come on. Like, you want to be like...
No, let's go for Pride Rock. How about we go Pride Rock and not the Elephant Wastelands?
Come on, you'd buy that.
No, I would 100% not. I would buy a Pride Rock one.
Come on.
With Rafiki holding Simba up. Like, I'd buy that in a heartbeat.
What about Treasure Planet from Treasure Planet?
Potentially.
That'd be sick.
But I'm definitely going for Pride Rock or Montanui first. But I digress. We're never going to agree on that one. We have very different tastes. All good, though. Get both perspectives. And then lastly, from the deck boxes and sleeves, we have a Scrooge McDuck, which was very briefly mentioned already. And a new, what looks to be Robin Hood card.
I believe he's like... It looks like he's taking a nap on a raft of some sort.
Kind of lounging around a little bit. But yeah, so a lot of new cool stuff. I think it's really exciting. And yeah, so with kind of that overview there. Oh, and then the second playmat is another Stitch card. So
very space age looking Stitch.
Say that very nonchalantly because I'm so into the Montanui one that the Stitch one is very much a secondary thought at this point.
I think we'll both be getting the Montanui one.
I really, really, really hope I get this one. Like I wanted One Jump Ahead. The One Jump Ahead art, the Maui one from chapter 1.
That's not One Jump Ahead. That's Aladdin. One Jump Ahead. You're thinking. What it?
No, it's I. Gosh, we gotta look this up now. I'm pretty sure it is One Jump Ahead.
No, that's Aladdin.
Okay, I know what you're saying, but what's the name of
Just in Time?
Just in Time. Gosh, you're right. Okay, I knew it. What Just in Time? The Maui art from chapter 1. I wanted that one. I wasn't really upset that I didn't get that one. No big deal. But that Montanui one from chapter 3, I will be a little bummed if I don't get that one.
Me as well. I mean, it's incredible.
Okay, so with that said, let's get into like the card reveals here. So we've got 3 cards and the location. So first off with the cards, we've got Minnie Mouse, Funky Spelunker.
Funky Spelunker. I love that.
So Minnie is very much a active, outgoing character here. We've got Wide-Eyed Diver, zipping around.
Yep.
Surfing.
Surfing, yes. I forgot about that one.
So there's Minnie Mouse is living her best life. I'll tell you that.
She's exploring the world at this point.
So she has 0 strength, 3 willpower, and steel. She is a 1 cost, so potentially be a very good opening character. Quest for one, and then her ability is while this character is at a location. So again, teasing the location pieces of the new set. She does attack +2. So she's got 2 strength if she's at a location.
Which is, that's pretty cool. You had a 1 cost 2, 3.
Yeah, that's really, really strong. Like mid to late game to get that on with like a Surfer Stitch. A Rockstar Stitch. If you're playing good old Amber Steel. It's a good, like...
Again, way too early, but it just seems solid.
No, I'm just... Yeah, I'm not saying, like, that's how it needs to... I'm just saying, like, I can see a ton of potential in the card.
Yeah, for sure.
Same with Piglet here. We have Piglet Pirate.
Which is a super rare.
Yeah, Pooh Pirate Captain is Piglet. And she's a 2 cost, 2 strength, 2 willpower, inkable card in Amber. Quests for 1. But it says while there are 2 other cards on the board, she quests for +2 lore. So again, another very solid Rockstar Stitch draw because she's under 2, can draw off of her, and she's going to want friends on the board to like activate her ability.
I believe Piglet is a captain card as well.
Pirate, Captain, Dreamborn, and Hero.
So that, those are some synergies there. I think that works into a few other, like there's a pirate synergy out there.
I've heard a lot of rumblings on a potential pirate deck. That would be crazy.
With the overall, we've got Peter Pan, we've got Hook, we've got Tinkerbell, Piglet, Pirate. Kind of seems we're going into that direction.
Potentially could. Yeah, so I think this is another one that has a lot of potential. It's definitely one I'm not going to write off just yet. Mm-hmm. I think given the ability to like flood the board and a cheap card, and it has the ability with those that cheap card, then it could very well be a really, really strong card. So for
sure, seems solid.
And then lastly on the character front is Peter Pan. The Lost Boy Leader.
Lost Boy Leader.
He's a 4-cost inkable card in Emerald. So an Emerald inkable, that's a good start.
That's a good start. Good start.
From where we already talked about this episode. 3 strength, 3 willpower. Quests for 1. However, his ability is once per turn, whenever this character moves locations, gain lore equal to the location's lore. So we get a little bit more tease about locations. You get tease about moving between locations. And Peter Pan then gets you free lore from moving locations. So that also seems broken.
It seems really nice. It's inkable, solid emerald.
3 strength, so immune to a single grab your swords, or strength of a raging fire, or fire the cannons. Obviously, smash would take him out. Or
strength of a raging fire could take it out.
Oh, I said that wrong.
Let the storm rage on.
Let the storm rage on. Yep. Thank you for correcting me on that one. But yeah, so I think that could be again. I'm definitely not one I'm writing off. I think that could be a very strong card, very fun to play. Moving around locations is also seem pretty interesting.
Yeah. And what I'm kind of getting overall from at least the art on these cards is the theme of exploration. Seems to be a big deal. So we're going into the Inklands, which so far we've only seen, I think, the Great Illuminary, I believe it's called. It's kind of like our home base in Lorcana.
Yep.
So we're expanding into the world itself.
It very much seems that way with as much zipping around, pun intended, as Minnie is doing. We're definitely going to get some more lore, pun intended.
Oh my gosh!
into
we better be prepared for all of this.
If you're not prepared, then you're going. I can't. I lost it. I thought I could get it, but no, I lost it.
Let's let the storm rage on.
But yeah, I think there's a lot of cool theming. It's very much my style of this one. Yep. And so I like it a lot. I think it's going to be really fun. But with that said, I think the reason we wanted to talk about this today is the locations. And so the first thing that jumps out at you at locations is all the cards today currently are in portrait mode, vertically. Yeah. And locations are landscape or horizontal. So the image of the card is, 90-degree pivoted in the other direction. And so it's clearly to denote that it's a location when it's on the board, it always, I would imagine, stay in that. Mm-hmm. And then you place cards on top of it or under it or around it to denote that it's in that location. But we have one location that's been revealed. You have it pulled up?
Yep.
Okay, go ahead and
this is Forbidden Mountain, which is Maleficent's castles, it says underneath. Which it's got incredible art. Hopefully we get I want to play Mad of this too.
Very amethyst. It is an amethyst. Very, very amethyst artwork.
So a few things to note here. The ink symbol, which it is inkable. It's 2-cost inkable.
Yep.
Is sideways on the card. It doesn't match with the rest of the card.
I would imagine that's because you want to hold it in your hand like a normal card, so that it's easy to see.
I would assume so.
But yeah, it's 2-cost inkable, so it definitely has a cost to play. We can confirm that.
Yes. 6 willpower, I believe.
Yep.
So this has to be taken out.
Yep.
And then one of a symbol we are not sure about yet, but we have speculation.
Well, yeah, and we'll get to that one in a second. And then it has a lore symbol, which is a little different.
It's a little faded out a little bit, it's black.
It's
a little different.
Kind of reversed. It's got the main part of it is white with a little dot in the middle.
You're right. It's completely reversed. So yeah, this would the normal lore would fit inside of this.
Yeah, the normal lore is a very thick border with nothing in the middle. This is a very thin border with most of it being background and then kind of another tiny lore symbol in the middle.
They completely match up. Wow.
Yeah,
that's
so
interesting.
The lore, which again matches with the Peter character, Peter Pan that we just mentioned. So, if he moves to the Forbidden Mountain, then the assumption being you gain a lore off of that move.
So what I would assume as well is that the lore symbol itself, when that character is on there, adds that lore to the character.
We've assumed that. Yeah.
And so he would be getting +2 lore if he were to move to Forbidden Mountain?
Potentially. I
mean,
mean,
that's just my
speculation. Obviously,
yeah.
We don't know this for certain yet, but that's definitely I've heard that theory too. That's either adding lore, given the way that the Peter card is worded, that leads us to believe that there will be location cards that allow you to quest for more than one, or maybe even none, and have a different type of ability that it gives you. And then lastly, there's another new symbol on the left-hand side of the card where there would normally be nothing, but there's a new symbol, and the Forbidden Mountain card is a 1.
So it's got 2. It costs 2 inkable, 6 willpower. It has 1 somewhat of a lore symbol, and then 1 brand new symbol that is 1.
Yeah, and I don't know if you've noticed, but within that symbol, it very much looks like an ink hexagon surrounded by something else. And so with that said, I think there are 2 main theories prevailing out there currently as to what that 1 on this card and location cards could mean. And those 2 theories are 1, meaning the first theory is that's the number of characters you can have at said location. So the Forbidden Mountain or Maleficent's Castle, this current location that we have, could only have 1 card at that location. It's got a 1 on there, so you can only have 1 card attached to said location.
Which would make sense for it being a 2 cost.
Yeah, that checks out.
So far, that sounds... We're about to get in the second option, but that sounds the most likely to me.
That's definitely one of them. I mean, I think this second theory also goes in line with the 2 cost inkable, is that it costs that much to have a character move to said location. Which again, I think with the ink symbol kind of in as part of that symbol, that also kind of checks out.
Sure.
So I don't really have any, I'm really 50-50 at which way this could go. I don't know if it's how many characters you can have there or how much it costs to move a character. So if you play Peter Pan and then you move him to Forbidden Mountain on your next turn, you'd have to pay 1 ink to move him to that location.
I mean...
That's the second theory.
Yeah, it's the second theory. Another thing to note here that kind of goes into that is that, just to get the overall value of the card maybe, this is a common card.
Yeah, no, that's very important. We definitely missed that part.
This is a common card, so all of this kind of crazy new stuff that we're talking about here is all within the common rarity. So we don't know if all locations are common, or if you're playing 4 locations in a deck. I don't know if there's a limit, maybe 1 per deck.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I know that there are obviously common cards that are played today that can be really good.
Yes.
But so that doesn't necessarily limit it. But to your point, this is probably on the lesser crazy side of locations we could potentially see.
Yes.
With so to the earlier point on this quest, or you have this location has 1 lore. Maybe another location has 5 lore, but we don't know how to activate said 5 lore, or whatever the case might be. And so, I think those 2 prevailing theories are where we're going. I heard that Steve Warner was going to be on the Discord this weekend, kind of answering some questions about locations, and so we could potentially update next week on what exactly he said and how, maybe some more fine details into how it's going to work. But for now, those are the prevailing theories, and I like them both. I think both of them add a decent, functionality to those locations.
For sure. And like I said before, I'm leaning more towards this. You can only have 1 location or 1 card at this location. That's kind of what I'm leaning towards right now. But I mean, it could be with you said, the ink looking symbol is kind of. It could go either way, I think. Yeah. It'd be interesting if it's a completely new theory that we haven't thought of, but I would say it's probably one of the 2.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say. I mean, I would be shocked if it's something new, but again, at this point, we're all kind of newbies.
We're trying to figure it out here.
Yeah, and I did ask online this week if there were other location type of gameplay within other TCGs, and I got some good responses that this isn't the most unique thing ever. Mm-hmm. My only experience with this type of paradigm within a game would be Disney Villainous, which I think has a lot of synergies. You got Ravensburger and Ravensburger.
Yep.
You've got, certain things that unlock at certain locations.
Steve Warner, I believe, is another commonality.
Yeah, so I could very much see locations that unlock, like, maybe not even lore, but abilities for characters that are there. Like, maybe there's an evasive location where cards at said location get evasive. Like,
yeah, this doesn't have an ability.
No.
It looks like it might have a spot for an ability at some point. Because it has like the subtext underneath. It has an eerie quiet surrounds the castle, but beware of the dangerous occupant within. But it has that little space above it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think there is a world where you have locations that just grant cards abilities, not just more lore, but yeah, we'll find out. Again, my experience with this was Disney Villainous, but it's rather, I don't want to say super common, but this isn't the first time that there's been a TCG with this paradigm.
Yeah.
So, okay, so you kind of answered my next question, which was going to be, which theory do you think is more likely? You said...
oh, my bad.
No, that's
skipped ahead.
No, you're not skipping ahead. It's just we're that much in sync right now.
There we go.
Okay, but my next question is, does this change the game too rapidly? Like, I get it, like, you want to keep the game fresh, but I also think, like, smaller changes, like adding resist to, chapter 2, I thought that was a very good, like, incremental, like, we're not completely breaking the game. Maybe these don't break the game, maybe they don't change it as much as we think, but to me, this seems like a very, very new paradigm that completely shifts the way that you have to think about it, because currently it's items, actions, and characters, and now you're adding a fourth one on top of that. And so, like, when you're deck building, you have to consider locations as well, and it's like, what are you removing? Are you removing an item? Are you removing characters? We've never played Pokemon, but I do know that, like, the ratio of, like, items and energy and action cards within that realm is very heavily weighted comparatively to the characters, unlike Lorcana, where you have a majority of characters and a few actions and songs and items. And so, like, does this shift away from just, like, a character-dominant game into locations, items, and actions?
I don't think so yet, because all of those things revolve around characters. Songs are very advantageous when you have a character that can sing it.
Very good point.
Locations, it seems like you have to have characters at locations for the whole thing to kind of activate. Items mostly work with different characters' abilities.
So are you giving up an action or an item in your deck? I mean, again, we don't know. Like, but just theoretically, like, if you're building a deck, are you taking out an action or an item to play this?
Probably taking out maybe an item, or a card that is very situational in your deck. A character card even that's situational, I think, is... Especially when you're talking about what we have here with Forbidden Mountain, a 2 ink that, so as far as we know, gives characters +1 lore when they quest.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point. I mean, they're definitely... I mean, ideally, you don't have situational characters. You have characters that, like, the first one that comes to mind is, like, Benja. Like, he's very situational in the sense of, like, he's going to be impactful if he can remove an item. But he's still a 2 lore quester, and so he still gives you value, even if he's not removing something. But yeah, I think there are still a few, like, if I play this card, great. If I don't, no big deal. And so does this, like, fill that slot and give you opportunity? And then lastly, the question I have is, like, do you always want to play a location? I mean, I guess it changes the tempo of the game. Like, if you're a pretty aggro deck, you probably aren't playing too many locations.
I have another theory to kind of put on top of that question here, because it would play into it. Does location cards protect your cards if you have them at that location?
I had that same question, and I honestly forgot to ask that. Is this is that strength
the willpower, the 6
like
willpower,
block, like a bodyguard on top of your character, or if you want to be proactive about, like, getting rid of the location, then that's what the willpower takes to get rid of.
I would assume if the idea is that that 6 willpower doesn't protect the characters, then I'd see the reason to take out a location would be the lore it's giving. Like with Forbidden Mountain, I would assume the reason you'd want to take out a card of 6 willpower is because of the lore it's giving the characters that are questing there, as far as we know.
Yep, and I would imagine it doesn't bodyguard them, because if you have a 2-cost 6 willpower bodyguard, that would be busted. So I doubt it's like a protector, but to your point, I think it's probably like a pseudo item in the sense of like, I have the ability to remove this, item, and I say item because it always stays on the board. And so like I have the ability to remove that quote item from the board by challenging it. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think you're probably right. I think that's the way that, that would be handled, but I think time will tell, right?
So to answer the question that I kind of piled that on top of, though, I believe it was if you think that they'll be played.
Yeah.
Kind of the overall. I mean, so certain decks they won't, like aggro, I don't think. I mean, maybe it does. Like, again, we have no idea.
Yeah.
What the
we're shooting in blank here.
Overall, yes, I do. Like,
yeah.
I think that I don't think they'd add an entirely new type of card so early in the game if it wasn't going to be impactful.
Yeah, I agree. I think you're on, and I agree with like your analysis as well. I think this is probably not an aggro tool. It's going to be too much of a tempo disruption. Like on turn 2, you're not playing something that's not questing or having a lot of lore impact in an aggro deck. You're playing a Pinocchio, or you're playing Simba that's going to protect your questers.
You're playing 4 cards in one turn.
Yeah, like you're just not going to slow your tempo down by doing this. And so I would imagine it's not much. I mean, I think there could be locations that cost 1, or, you talked about a card that, like potentially wanted that was like a 0-cost card that did something. Maybe there's a crazy 0-cost location that adds something to the table. Who knows? But the point is I think this is very much more like your standard mid-range / control tool to add, ability / new mechanics to your deck to help you out.
Yeah, and I do think it's a little too early. We don't know how impactful they're going to be, but I do think it's too early. It's, in my opinion, a little too early for the Chapter 3 reveal overall.
I agree, but this is exactly how they did it last time. It went wide release, and then the next week we got info, and so that's exactly what they did this time. So that's probably the cadence going forward. So we got to get used to that one
for sure. And that's just, it is what it is. I think we overall have an idea of like, because we thought Prince John was going to be the end all be all. Certain cards like that, we thought, and I would believe the Relentless Beast would play into that as well. We thought these cards were going to be...
I think we did pretty solid, though. We said Cinderella would be incredible. Cinderella is incredible. Both of the Cinderellas are incredible. So we're hitting better.
We kind of shifted that the Belle Hidden Archer would be situational.
Yeah. No, and like I said when we started off on this, I mean, we're definitely not going to talk about this every time going forward. It'll be more on like a grouping, on like
situational basis.
Here's a lot of the stuff that's come out and we want to update because there's been something important or whatever.
We'll probably do a location, like all the locations, I would think, at least, just because it's brand new.
Yeah, I think that's a good one for sure. Okay, well, I think that pretty much wraps it up. Any final thoughts on Chapter 3 or changes or anything else, or what you would like to see in Chapter 3?
Well, over like I said earlier, I hinted at it, but Treasure Planet, like,
pumped about that, I know.
Pumped. DuckTales, Spencer, our friend Spencer is
Spencer.
very happy, but also I am as well. Watched the original show and the new one. So I love me some DuckTales, some Launchpad McQuack, please. Gizmo Duck.
We talked about Launchpad last
Darkwing.
Night. I mean, Darkwing would definitely be Spencer's number 1, but that's like its own thing now.
I understand.
So it's potentially not included.
But
no, I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm not
love.
saying you're wrong, but yes, I agree. I know that there's a lot of calls for that.
Beagle Boys
too. So
I'm getting way too excited.
Well, we're at some point we're going to do another like wishes and hopes for the future, and so we can definitely have those checked off because I know a lot of people were looking for it. So, as always, everyone, thanks for listening. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time.
All right, see you guys.
Bye.